Fairview Planning Commission meeting. If you'll join me for our opening, our prayer, and our pledge. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll go to item 2, approval of the agenda. We have a first, Mr. Powers. Second, Burks. Any discussion? All in favor?
Oh, wait. Do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
need to add anything? Oh, okay.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, item 3, citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments tonight? Thank you. Item 4 is approval of minutes. We did not get the October minutes. They're having some printer difficulties, so if everyone agrees, we'll defer that and review for next month's meeting. Yeah, if we get a motion to defer just for proper. Yeah, Burks first, Powers second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, first item of business will be bonds, item 5.1. Heartland Reserve, Section 4, letter of credit in the amount of $262,000 to cover roads, sidewalks, storm drainage, and other improvements specified by the approved plans. Planning Commission set the amount for $609,000 at the October 13, 2015 meeting. Planning Commission voted to reduce the amount to $365,400 at the October 11, 2016 meeting. Planning Commission voted to reduce the amount to $262,000 at the November 7, 2016 meeting. Letter of credit will expire December 1st, 2017. Staff, you guys have any comments on that one? Well, I'm sorry.
I can read them for you.
Mr. Jenkins, will you read the staff comments, please?
The city engineer performed his site inspection. Based on a site visit on October 24th, 2017, the city engineer recommends reducing the bond to $185,000.
Thanks, sir.
Second the motion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Owen.
Chairman, if I will, both item 5.1 and 5.2, that date course of my observation corresponds to the staff review meeting that we have each month. At that time, it was unsure if I was going to be able to get back to conduct those observations prior to tonight's meeting. So those numbers are reflective of that date. I have since visited both the sites, and so I would recommend, at least for item 5.1, that reduction amount be $134,000 and revised from that 185.
Okay.
I have a question. Will, I know there was some issue with some water runoff and complaints from citizens. Have those been addressed, and would this affect your amount?
I'm vaguely familiar that there were some stormwater concerns. Those concerns would not be reflected in this bond amount. I believe those concerns, not certain if they're in Section 3 or this Section 4.
Okay. Can the city speak on that? I mean, would this affect any reduction? Mr. Collins?
Mayor, members of the commission, I can speak to that. No, ma'am, it would not address that. The drainage issue that they're in question, and I'll be presenting something to the Board of Commissioners Thursday night, is separate from this and outside the city's right-of-way or property. Specifically, the area of concern is roughly half dozen homes in the lowest part of the subdivision. There is an actual creek or streamway that runs through there that's adjacent to that property that actually runs from near Interstate 40 through. I believe on some of the parcels within that subdivision, it's actually listed as a 50-foot streamway in the front of the properties or parcels between the property where the home sits and the roadway where it's clearly defined on the deed. So in addition to the drainage way, it's actually on the deed, it's noted on the deed. Any changes to that stream would require a process by the developer through the Corps of Engineers outside the purview of the city to make any remedy or recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And so this section, how, are they almost complete? They just have one section left, is that right?
Stanza or Mr. Owen, do y'all know if this is the last phase?
It is the last phase.
Any other questions? And so we had a first and a second for that 185 amount. I don't know if you guys want to remove those. Okay. And so the new recommendation from our city engineer after the site review would be 134,000.
I'd make a motion that we reduce the bond to 134,000 for section 4 of the Heartland Reserve.
And I will second that motion.
Any additional discussion or questions?
I have one more. Mr. Owen, so this will cover their, exactly this 134 when you did the calculation. What will this cover? What's left?
The remaining items that are left to be installed is the finished asphalt top coat. The sidewalks in front of the lots that don't currently have sidewalks. And I believe there was also some minor grading and some dirt relocation for some of those stockpiled areas that we included as well.
Plus 25%, is that correct?
Correct, plus 25% of that estimated cost of those activities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or discussion? We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 5.2, Fairview Station Phase 1, irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $300,000 to cover roads, sidewalks, storm drainage, and other improvements specified by the approved plans. Planning Commission set the amount on October 11th, 2016. Letter of credit will expire November 3rd, 2018. Developer is requesting a reduction in amount. And we have some staff comments. Mr. Jenkins, if you could read those for me.
Sir. The city engineer has received the as-built drawings per the Fairview subdivision regulations and performed his site inspection. And based on a site visit on October 24th, 2017, the site engineer recommends reducing the bond to $325,000.
Mr. Owen, do you have?
Correct, and the same timeline issue is involved in this development as well. So based on today's observation, I'd recommend a bond reduction to $255,000.
Thanks, sir.
Just so everybody's up to speed, the city is currently in possession of a letter of credit for $300,000 that was a renewal of the one that is set to expire at the end of this month. And its issue date is November 3rd, 2016 was the initial issue date. The expiration date now has October 13th, 2018. So it's in place at $300,000. If the developer chose to replace this $300,000 one, they could do so at any time prior to that October 13th, 2018.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or discussion?
Make a motion to reduce to $255,000.
Our second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Move on to old business, item 6.1. Item 6.1 will be ordinance 01-17, an ordinance to amend the municipal zoning ordinance as it pertains to the RS-15 district. This is a continuance from our discussion from last month. I guess we have something coming to us in regards to it.
It's just a copy of what was passed out last month. I didn't know if anybody still had the previous copy, so.
I don't have the minutes from last month, but I think maybe Mr. Potter, you were going to try and review it if you could, or
And Mr. Chairman, this came up last month as there was some discussion about should the zoning ordinance be amended to allow RS-15 single-family residential in Fairview. I think there was some general discussion about it, about whether or not it would be appropriate and what would that look like. I was asked to take a look at maybe some other municipalities and see what they were doing. I've had some discussion with Ms. Costanzo about this, and know that the city of Dixon does 8,000 square feet is the smallest zoning that they have. That's 15,000 residents there. Coopertown does not have RS-15. I think 20,000 is the smallest that they have. You know, Laverne, I know that Kristen had some frame of reference from Laverne. This is RS-15, maybe the largest that they have. So I think, you know, it depends on oftentimes how urban the area is versus how rural it is. So I can't really tell you what you should do. I think that you did some considerations. You want to go over some of those thoughts that we had? We talked about that today. Prepared to get the list here.
The city has approximately 5 RS-15 traditional subdivisions already in place from a previous time when the PUD requirement was not on the books. So Leverett Meadows, Horn Tavern Estates, Fernvale Heights, Blakemont Estates, and Evergreen Acres. You know, removing the mandatory PUD requirement, it just means that you'll have a traditional RS-15 where all the lots are 15,000 or larger, so you don't have to worry about the lots being crammed together. It's the difference between, you know, a third of an acre versus a half an acre. We're only talking 5,000 square feet here. So, I mean, there's been some discussion about maybe allowing the RS-15 traditional only when there's conventional sewer, which would then basically limit an RS-15 to 20 houses, since the going rate of sewer taps is roughly 20 at a time. Again, the city of Dixon, which is fairly comparable in population, I mean, they've got districts that range from 8,000 all the way up to an acre. So, I mean, we currently have 13 residential districts, and we have about 9,000 people. So, you know, we only have RS-40 and RS-20 that don't allow, or that allow for traditional subdivision that doesn't require the PUD. Then you have the 15, the 10, the 8, and the 5 that all require to be, you know, to have the PUD overlay. I think I've talked about before that there's a lot of existing single-family lots that are zoned RS-40 or maybe even RS-20 that don't have that square footage, just because when they were brought into the city, that was they were single-family, that was the zone that they were given. So I don't know that you know, allowing this requirement to go away is going to create any you know, major problem for the city. I think it'll help some people here and there that have, you know, 35,000 square feet and just really want to have 2 lots. And it might allow for a couple of smaller traditional subdivisions that have 15,000 square feet or larger, as opposed to the PUDs with the crammed in, you know, some 16,000, some with 6,000 square feet, if the commission is concerned about, you know, the smaller cramped lots. So just some things to think about.
And regardless of what you do, you know, if you did amend your zoning ordinance to allow RS-15 for single-family residential, you know, remember that, you know, setbacks and road frontage requirements, those things are still going to apply. I mean, they don't, still going to be applicable, so.
Mr. Owen, any chance you have those handy in front of you there, that road frontage, widths, and setbacks and things, and so you would have to have a certain requirement in order to be able to rezone it to an R-15.
RS-15, minimum lot width at the building, front building line is 75 feet. Front setback, minimum building setback from the front yard is 30 feet, side yard is 10 feet, and the rear yard is 20 feet.
Thank you, sir.
That comparison to the R20, so the minimum lot width for R20 at the building setback line is 100 feet. For R15 would be 75. Minimum front setback for R20 is 35. RS15 would be 30. Side setbacks for R20 is 15, for RS15 is 10. Both have the same rear setback of 20 feet.
So this was presented to us last month from Vice Mayor Crutcher, and just trying to get some feedback from us to send to the board. So I don't know if any of this information helps, if we want to discuss some more. I know we discussed pretty detailed last month.
Question and a comment, mostly on the street setbacks. The mayor has made a comment, which I agree, that, you know, trying to make the city look more attractive to the people that are coming here, we hope, and the businesses and whatsoever. And to me, the things that I'm seeing that are residential that are popping up on 96 and on Highway 100 that are so close to the road, and a few other main arteries off of the main roads, are set way too close to the main arteries to the city, and therefore do not give what I call an aesthetic look as you would come into the city. And to me, I don't mind this R15. I'm kind of in favor of it. But I think the second issue to me is on the main arteries, not necessarily just Highway 96 and 100, the setbacks need to be addressed so that in the future, what's coming on those pieces of property are further back off the road so that the city looks a little better.
We don't want to stray too far from the business at hand, but certainly agree, something to explore, and hopefully maybe we can explore that as we dig into some of the new rules and things. But something we talked about last year, we had a discussion on that as well, and I agree. But I don't think if we dig too far into that,
No,
it
I
would relate
agree.
with what
I
we're
just-
currently talking about.
Right. I just don't like the setbacks if they're on the main arteries.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
So on this right here, you basically couldn't divide your property and build a house behind the house because you wouldn't be able to have the road frontage.
Correct.
You would have to have a wide enough lot to do this and not a long lot.
You have to have at least a 150-foot wide lot with road frontage to get two lots out of it.
And it would,
75 and 75, 150. If you went with two R15s instead of a 2015. Yeah.
I guess that was my thing is, I really want to do this, but I don't want everybody to have a house in the back of their house kind of a deal.
So it doesn't, how it would read with the width, it doesn't allow like a flagpole lot.
Correct. Flag lots are allowed
At 75 feet.
with certain caveats,
Okay.
but they are allowed. The question at hand is going to be based on the genesis of this request. What's the next request going to be so that we can allow, so that the city can allow a 40,000 square foot lot to be, or 38,750 square foot lot to be divided into two? I would anticipate that if you had a lot that did not have the 150-foot wide width to be able to, that there's going to be some requests to reduce lot width and/or flag lot proposals that you may see come in front of you. Again, not to dampen or say that that's an obstacle, or those are obstacles that can't be overcome, but those may be some of the realities that you see down the road. There are plenty of communities that allow RS-15 as standalone zones. That's the issue. I think the issue is what will the ramifications be specifically for Fairview?
I'm just kind of at the point where I want the total design to look good as the community, but I think we're at the point where we take individual property owners, rights away, especially if it's family land, and if we have nothing in, provision for something like that, where you want to give your child part of your property. So it's a fine line, when you do this and what you want your community to look like. But regardless of what people think, the smaller lot sizes are what this younger generation is looking for. And if they're going to be able to afford houses in our community, it's going to have to be considered. I think 100% no junk. Let's make it quality. And but I think by not allowing an individual to subdivide their lot to give to their child is not really the direction that we want to go as a city.
It's the one thing, because I know these, because I've got an RS-40 and it's not 40,000 square feet. And my thing would be is that if they was divided, I would want to make sure the minimum of either lot was at least 15,000. I wouldn't want, all of a sudden we've got them 13,000 or this or that. I would want them to, if they was divided, that the minimum would be 15,000, not 14,999. And
I agree with that, yeah.
and that way, if you've got a big enough lot to do that, then.
What we're looking at doing with that, do that, the way the wording, because that's going to be the most important part. As long as we're clear, then, I'd say that would be the way to go.
And actually, all tonight we're doing is just
Recommend.
recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. That's right.
One thing I think we
my general feel for urban and rural is maybe different from other people's, but personally, I think you would find that you would find that more rural type communities have an RS-15 zone than you would think. I just looked up, when they were referencing some other communities, I just looked up White House. I know White House has been discussed in years past as kind of a sister city to Fairview, and they have RS 10, 15, 20, and 40. Don't think anyone would classify White House as being an urban setting, but again, it's a lot more about perspective and personal opinion, when you're kind of talking about some of those types of terms. But I think in conjunction with setbacks and lot widths, a 15,000 square foot lot development in conjunction with those other types of restrictions or guidelines can be done in a manner that has a rural feel to it, without a doubt.
And just to I get what you're saying, Commissioner Burks, but the thing about it is, I'm not saying just for a family. I'm just saying a lot of communities have RS-15, and if we're setting the precedence or a family property, because that's what's been brought in front of us, that's a good enough reason. But to sit there, anybody's going to have to come in front of the board because we have no zone RS-15s available. So I think that when you sit there and you look at your community, and I know we're doing stuff as far as hopefully one day doing a comprehensive plan, we can, look at the land use maps and do that kind of stuff and decide what kind of planning we want to do. But we already know there's a problem. And the example is there's individuals that live in our community that can't even subdivide their property. So, I don't know what the turnoff on RS-15 zoning is. When there's several other communities that have those zonings. And right now, we're not set up where everybody could come in and do a RS-15 because we don't have any zone. They would have to come in front of the board.
One of the lots that you mentioned was that the Horn Tavern Estates is on an RS-15 and not an RS-20. And when you drive down Horn Tavern Road and you see those different neighborhoods that are on there, I would have never known that they had a smaller lot size than the one next to them. They all still look very uniform to me. And, it's not like you pointed it out and looked at it and said, oh, well, those are cramped lots. I don't think that anybody drives by there and says that. So if worrying about them being cramped is the problem, the RS-15 makes the individual lot sizes way bigger than some of the PUDs we've seen come in here.
Well, and I'm more about the quality, we having builders come in and building quality subdivisions. That's more a concern to me besides the lot size. Are they completing? Does it look nice? Are they having trouble with runoff and drainage? And, are citizens calling and complaining while the developer's still in there? Those are things that are issues to me. If somebody wants to come in and build a nice RS-15 home on an RS-15 lot, I don't really know why we're so against it.
I think for me, Mayor, whenever I think about this, is as we go to higher density. The other day on Facebook, somebody said something about the Horn Tavern where after the rain the other night there had been runoff. I drove out there to look. And the one thing that I do know is every time I drive down Horn Tavern Road, I'm just wondering how many, because these subdivisions come up and they get a traffic report for their subdivision. Well, then the next one comes in, and they don't take that into account, that there's more and more and more. They just get for their subdivision. And when I drive down Horn Tavern Road, it's scary how narrow that road is. And it's not the R-15. I mean, it's not, I don't care. I mean, we're a bedroom community, more or less. People don't want to have to come home and mow an acre lot or pay somebody $100 every week to do that. So I understand the R-15. I think it's where they're at. We've got some coming up tonight that is density, but they're coming out on Highway 96. They don't have to drive 3 miles one way or the other down Horn Tavern or Cumberland or any of these other roads to get out. So my opposition to RS-15 is our roads are not quite adequate to handle the number of people we're talking about putting on them. But I like the R-15. I know it's good for the builders. I know, you know, people are wanting to buy the smaller lots. I don't want to mow my yard. I'm getting older, so I understand that. We have a lot of older people move into this neighborhood, into this town, so.
So it's easy to stray on the discussion, but so I guess the first question to us would be the RS-15, do you agree or disagree? The next question would be the cap or size. So do you limit it to the sewer taps of 20? Do you limit it to a one parcel that goes into two? Do you allow neighborhoods? And so I don't know if we can steer that direction. We can discuss and try and see if we agree on the R-15 or not, to see if we want to go that, just to try and give some kind of feedback back to the board to discuss a little further too. But I feel like we're getting a little bit of a feeling more of the RS-15 isn't the biggest deal. It's maybe the larger parcels or I don't know. We're going back and forth. But.
Well, I think so many times the RS-15s come to the board as a PUD, and they can have variations of lot sizes, and there's such a wide range, and they're not really doing it. So I think that's been a lot of the hang-up why people are turned off. You know, I think if you got the lot size correct, I think that, it might be more appealing.
Any additional discussion, or does anyone like to make any kind of recommendation that we can vote on?
Just to be clear, at the end of the day, if we do go ahead and approve this, if someone comes before the board and they want to build a new development, we still have control over that. We still have the ability to say yay or nay. This isn't just a free-for-all. The second we start this, it's not a free-for-all. Like, we still have control to be able to decide what our city is going to look like.
If you allow an RS-15 standalone district and someone brought in and met the requirements, it would be difficult to say, but that's more of a Mr. Potter discussion. But we would see any kind of rezoning that would come in forward to us.
But it would have to meet those requirements or those
Absolutely.
standards that we
Those
set
widths,
forth.
absolutely.
I mean, you could have, as soon as this goes forward and if the board passed it, you can have that individual owner that has a 100-acre lot and decide that they want to rezone, and you could. So you could open to be realistic. But, it would have to come in the front of the board. They're not going to get that man a 100-acre lot. They're not going to have water taps. They're going to have to do some kind of sewage or step system. I think that's why getting the size correct, because sometimes you would have to live with what the decision is.
I think the one thing that we have talked about tonight would be, if the board was going to pass this, would be put the restrictions on it, that it had to be where you could hook up to sewer, not be on a step system. The actual, because really this started out about dividing one lot, not R-15 as a whole. It was one man about one lot. And so if you divide it and you could not go under the 15,000 square foot, you couldn't have, like I said, 14,999. You had to be able to hook up to a sewer and everything. That would greatly restrict who could do this and where they could do it at. setbacks and things would do that. My thing would be is the board just really needs to make sure that they've got the restrictions in order to give us a certain amount of latitude to control it a little bit, as opposed to just saying, yeah, we can have R-15 and there's no restrictions on it.
Yes. Oh,
Collins.
May I add just a couple of points to discussion to move forward? As I understand it tonight, the only question is the adoption or consideration of R-15 or RS-15 as a standalone zoning is the item you have before you. In consideration of that, there are several factors to be looked at that will take much longer than we have tonight, but I'll highlight some of those from a city management standpoint and not necessarily the planning commission standpoint. First off, the RS-15 zoning in and of itself is not a difficult thing. The conversation that's been had here tonight, and there have been several points. One is the traffic. One of the issues specifically was the use of a traffic plan as it relates to specific subdivision. We're looking to move away from that, so you'll know. Traffic plans, and I'm getting to a point, the traffic plan for an individual spot or location really is ineffective for the growth area. Let's take Horn Tavern or Old Nashville. I've proposed this to the council. We've been back and forth on it, or the board of commissioners, excuse me. But as we get into the comprehensive plan and some of the other things we're going to have to look at, some of our minor and major arterials, Cumberland, Chester Road, Horn Tavern, Old Nashville, will have to have their own traffic plans for the length of that roadway. It's more than just the vehicles you put on the road, it's the intersections you create when you put those on the road. So there's work to be done there to make sure that's effective. That would be absent of this zoning. The second issue that's been talked about is the sewer, whether or not you have access to conventional sewer or a step system. The R-15, RS-15 zoning, if it passes, would simply be a zoning. The term PUD, as has been used in the city, has been somewhat misapplied in that typically a PUD is brought to the city if that property needs on-site sewer, where really it just means a lower lot size than the 15,000 square feet. We've talked internally about this, and an option to fix that is if you have an R-15 or RS-15 straight zoning, and it is what it is, R-15 that needed to be a PUD, so to speak, for on-site sewer would simply be designated something other than an R-15 PUD. We would reclassify that as some other thing because a PUD in its general use and manner would be a parcel that's one parcel that has multiple size lots and homes. A PUD, for what we've used it for in the past, is just an average of lower size lots that are randomly installed on a piece of property to facilitate on-site sewer. So as we look forward, the city, as we're doing during the day, is looking at a redesignation rather than a PUD designation for on-site sewer requirement on a piece of property. We know we're going to have to address that. The third part of this process is, regardless of if the R-15 goes or not, or RS-15 goes or not, it's going to have to go before this body and the Board of Commissioners for a rezoning application. So if a subdivision comes before you as an R-15 or RS-15, it's going to be a standalone 15,000 square foot lot, and the lot's going to have to be 15,000 square feet. It is what it is, in concert with the traffic study for the roadway that applies. In this case, we're also going to have to look at our comprehensive plan as a creation of a functional land use map. So as we move forward, our land use map, if we do that appropriately, we'll have R-15 zones, R-20 zones, R-10 zones, R-40, whatever the R is, so that as you look at this going forward, after 18 months from now, if something comes to you and it's a proposed R-15, it either meets the land use map or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then it just simply wouldn't apply. Our recommendation wouldn't go forward. So the R-15 in of itself, not a bad thing. The question about them coming up individually, they are going to come up individually. You're going to have to apply that to the surrounding land use. If I have a property that comes up, and I can see now, I looked at two of the lots today, where given this R-15 zone, and I'm for the R-15 zone for what it's worth, if it were to go forward, there are at least two property owners who live in Castleberry Farms who could come tomorrow and ask that their property be rezoned. I would hazard a guess to say that no one is going to rezone a lot in Castleberry Farms in R-15, R-20. So there'll be some common sense that goes through with this, and it would apply to the surroundings. So for the city's standpoint, we're going to make a concerted effort to make sure that our land use map and our traffic plans meet the proposed use of the property, so that when that comes to this body, you don't have to make that decision. It either fits or it doesn't, if that helps you in your process. So just an update is where we are.
Thanks, sir. Any additional? I'd love to give either a for or against if we can get to there, just to send it through the motions for further discussion.
Well, I mean, I would like to make a recommendation, but I guess I can do it just as well as anybody else. But, yeah, I don't know if me making a recommendation to go into the Board of Commissioners, I'm not going to do it. I think I'll sit back and vote. But I would rather, if it's really a recommendation of this board, to come from somebody than a member that sits on the board. So.
And just a quick point of reference, the land use map reference would reference 15,000 square foot lots as medium density, our current land use map. And you can argue whether it's out of date or not, but it does reference that zone.
I'd like to recommend they go forward with this.
To allow for a standalone RS-15 zone.
Correct.
So you'd make a motion for a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
I will second that.
Henderson first, Slaughter second, for a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Collins. All right, we'll go to new business, item 7.1. Rezoning a property requested by Jeff Wynn, property located at 1179 and 1183 Highway 96 North, tax map 21, parcels 23.10 and 23.11, 5.26 acres, current zoning district RS40, requested zoning district commercial general, property owned by Jeff Wynn. Lincoln, so we have a few staff comments there, if I could get you to read them for me.
On my right papers here. I do not have staff comments. Do you have staff comments? I do have staff comments. There are no planning or engineering staff comments on this rezoning request. Per the proposed land use map, these two properties are shown to be commercial. The applicant has submitted all the required documentation.
We have representation here tonight. Want to have any questions for the applicant? Burks?
I have a question for the city attorney. Mr. Potter, when I was reviewing this item, it included a copy of the deed for the property. And this may or may not make a difference, but I wanted to ask about it. It's an executor's deed, and specifically it states in the deed that this property shall have no commercial or multifamily structures such as blah, 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 blah. Is part of the restrictions on it. And then number 8 in that list is also no commercial or business activity. Should that have any bearing on this request to rezone? Mhm. What we were kind of figuring, but we just kind of wanted to make sure.
No questions?
And I apologize, I can't read the map from here, so. Is there commercial on either side of this property currently?
Across the street, we've got Jingo Road, there is a large church.
Other than that, what's the closest non-residential to it?
There's actually there's a few that are dotted throughout there. It's either commercial or it's single family residential, with the exception of a couple of apartments. There's another storage facility about a little less than a mile away, maybe 5,000 feet.
It would be fully surrounded by residential, single family on all four sides.
Right.
Northwest Highway right there coming in on Highway 96. There's an old house sitting on that parcel next to it there.
Just west, towards you can see New Hope. New Hope Pass is just up, so the industrial park is just up the street, actually.
And the land use map called these two parcels and I guess another one next to it out as commercial, which I thought was really odd. And when you look at the land use plan, that
it
color
does,
is
yeah.
the only color on that land use plan.
There's a few parcels grouped together, and honestly, it's probably based on what was there and the church being there, and again, there's a couple other existing commercials here and there. There's a little garage. You've got the T-Dot, station, and then everything west after the industrial park is commercial.
And is the individual wanting to build the storage facility, or is he selling it to?
No, he indicated in your rezoning application that he's owned the property, been a resident for 21 years. He wants to build it himself. I had expressed to him that we have the design review requirements that require brick, and he said he was planning on doing at least those requirements, if not nicer. And he was hoping to pass down the business, to one of his family members. But Mr. Wynn's here if you have any specific questions for him.
So, but there's actually not residential beside well, there's one. You can see the house on the map. But the other property, there's nothing on it.
There is an old house there on the corner of Northwest, on that 5.09 acre parcel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's right up there by the road in the northeast corner.
How do they get around the deed restriction if the deed restriction is no commercial?
Well, the deed restrictions, I don't know enough about this to know whether or not who can enforce these other than others who would have if these are restrictive covenants within a neighborhood, or if they run with the land and an adjacent property owner might have a right to enforce these covenants, but
Okay.
I don't know enough about that, and I don't know who who these are applicable to, but I don't think it would prevent a municipality from rezoning the property.
Okay.
City planner has more information about.
Create like a civil matter or something after?
Right.
It would be a civil matter. If you have a subdivision with an HOA, they frequently have covenants and restrictions. And if somebody decides they want to make their shed out of vinyl instead of brick, and the covenants say it has to be brick, the city is not going to get involved in delegating they're not going to do anything about that situation. That one of either another property owner in the neighborhood or the HOA itself would have to take that homeowner to court to settle that matter based on the restrictions.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this particular, I haven't looked at it in advance of the meeting, but I don't know whether or not someone might have standing to enforce these restrictive covenants. If Mr. Nguyen had his property rezoned and wanted to start a commercial enterprise, maybe there's restrictive covenants that are still, that are still enforceable. Maybe someone has standing to enforce them. Maybe someone could get injunctive relief to prevent it from happening. I don't know. Couldn't tell you tonight.
It's something you would normally see in a subdivision, not necessarily just a rural tract property, which was kind of odd.
The restrictive covenants are common in subdivisions, but I'm not sure why these are included in this deed. I don't know if they're. We'd have to do a title search to see if the restricted covenants are recorded and who's subject to the covenants. I don't know. I'm just looking at a executor's deed in a vacuum, so I'm not sure.
But for us tonight, if it, not counting that deed restriction that may or may not, for us, that's not relevant.
We're not a party to the deed restriction.
Right. And if they can't,
No,
build this on there, if there's, they could always come back and have it reverted back to RS-40 if they needed to. That would be on them, but if they meet all the criteria, we really don't have any
We are
reason
not.
not to approve.
We don't have a duty to
Standing.
anyone based
Okay.
on those restrictions, but I couldn't tell you whether or not someone's being wronged by it without looking at it in more detail.
Well, and my concern is not so much that the city's necessarily bound by that, is so much as, are we setting someone up for failure to say, but I guess that's on them. My other concern, more of a real concern here, is we're taking a nice rural spot that's all residential through there and sticking commercial right in the middle of it. But I guess, again, if the neighbors have issues, when it gets to the Board of Commissioners, there'll be public hearings. They can come forward and be heard on that, but.
And two parcels behind that would be the large master plan community, Brownland Farms, or whatever the name, if it still exists, but it is approved for back there.
I'm of the opinion that I'd rather protect the residents so that they don't have to then do something like that. Like, the buck can stop here. You're right, it's a commercial lot smack dab in the middle of a huge residential community right there. Plus, there's another storage lot less than a mile down the road, providing the same exact service to the city.
Maybe that's an option to try and get some better clarification as far as the restrictions on the deed, to try and get it, who would be the affected party, and does that affected party give a release or something like that?
And as an addition to that, I'm happy to do a comprehensive list of what's in that area, because I believe literally just down the road, it's already zoned commercial, because I have another person that I've been working with who was wanting to potentially put a business there, and it's already zoned commercial. So I'm happy to just, get you a list of what's there and how everything's zoned.
Okay, excellent.
Make a motion, we defer this to the December meeting.
First, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move to item 7.2. Site plan First Bank proposed 1,250 square foot addition to existing bank, property located at 2198 Fairview Boulevard, tax map 42, parcel 171, 92 acres, property zoned commercial general, property owned by First Bank. We have a few staff comments there. Mr. Jenkins, if I can get you to read them.
Yes, sir. Number one, the retaining wall and the handrail details must be submitted for city review prior to any issuance of permits. Number two, the invert in elevation of the catch basin that is tying to the existing 15-inch CPP is the same as the invert out elevation of the upstream storm structure to the southwest. This renders the 20-foot of HDPE pipe between the structures with no slope. Please revise accordingly. Number three, do not enter signage striping should be placed at new access drive that wraps around the back of proposed addition. Number four, the handicapped curb cut detail shown on sheet C5.0 is for parallel ramps. Both of the proposed ramps are perpendicular ramps, and a revised detail should be included on the plans. And number five, per the arborist, redbuds should be added to replace one tulip poplar and 2 river birch that will be removed.
Thanks, sir. We have representation here tonight. Sir? Any questions for the applicant?
Strange question here. Who's on the tree board?
Ms. Slaughter.
Okay, but that didn't come in front of, did that come in front of y'all?
Also did not have a quorum on Tuesday and therefore did not have a meeting this month.
Okay.
It sounds like Mr. Berkeley has reviewed it and added some notes about the redbud.
Mr. Berkeley did review at the plan review workshop on the 24th, and then he made a site visit to,
The active.
he looked at it and actually measured the trees that were, there's literally only 3 trees that will be removed, so he made a recommendation.
And the only reason and this is splitting hairs, but why are we telling, like, if they had one tree, why are we making them replace it with redbuds? If they had a certain type of trees?
That was the city arborist's suggestion, that we replace them with the city tree, the redbud.
Was the approved tree list in place when the original building had one? And would these be on the approved tree list, the originals?
The approved tree list came in, I think, around 2001. So I don't know. I mean,
Well, the tulip poplar is a state tree, so it's on our approved list. And I'm pretty sure that the river birch are also on our approved list. So I think he was just wanting to replace trees that were being taken down with the city tree.
that's exactly, he's all about the city tree.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that vision of this.
I know, but I'm a girl. I like things to match.
Little
I have a little OCD in me, and I'm thinking if we already had one type trees and we're dictating to a business what kind of tree, to replace it with, I just was curious how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just his suggestion. You can certainly just approve it with replacement of 3 trees of the same caliber from the approved tree list.
Questions? Anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Owen, yes, sir.
Yeah, I might bring to your attention, The first comment is pertaining to the retaining wall. As it exists right now, the way the comment is written, staff would interpret that to mean that the retaining wall details would just be approved at the staff level. However, I do want you to be aware that the height of that wall at its tallest point is around 5 feet tall. And so as you are coming up City Center Way there, just to the back of the bank, you will be able to see that retaining wall as you're driving up City Center Way. So if you have any desire to review that from an architectural review standpoint, make that known in any motion that you make tonight, that you'd like to see the architectural details of that wall as a part of any, prior to moving forward with that part of the site, or really with any part of the site, you want to see that detail.
Can you just confirm the location of that retaining wall? Is it the back of the drive?
So if you're looking at sheet C 3.0, or 2.0 would work if you only would like to. Actually, 3.0 is going to be the sheet to go to. You'll see in the upper left corner a handicap parking spot designation. That retaining wall will wrap around the back side of those new parking spaces along the rear of the property.
I kind of always would have liked to seen us to be able to cut through instead of having to go down when you go to First Bank and go around. And I don't see, unless I missed it when I was looking at it earlier.
Currently, it's just gone out a block retaining wall.
It's my belief that the bank has an intention to make that wall as architecturally aesthetic as possible. So I don't think there's a desire here to just put up cinder block or anything like that. But I just want to make you aware that will be a visible component to this revised site as you're coming up City Center Way. And I don't want anyone from the Planning Commission coming back to the staff and saying, well, why didn't somebody point that out to us? That's all I'm saying. And there is a note there on the bottom of that C 3.0 that the contractor shall submit block type, color, et cetera, to architect for approval prior to construction. So even internally, the bank has a desire, or the bank's architect has a desire to see what the contractor is going to propose as far as the aesthetics of that wall. So I don't think it's out of line for you guys to want to see what those details look like as well.
Has the applicant had a chance to get those 5 staff comments for possible review? You guys have any comments on those staff comments or any objections, or have you seen them? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Have you had a chance to see those 5 comments from the staff?
I heard about them today, and the bank takes no issue with them. We do agree with the guardrail requirement behind the retaining wall. That was not included with the original issue of the drawings, but that is something that is being worked on and will be provided as might be stipulated during the plan review process that we're about to go through. No, this will be decorative. Probably 1.5 inch round pipe handrail, 42 inches tall. Also, a horizontal handrail or rail at the bottom of the guardrail, with 1-inch round pickets at 4-inch centers, or actually 5-inch centers, no further than 4 inches gap between pickets as stipulated by the Handicap Accessibility Code. So, and that detail, again, will be provided to staff for review and approval.
That's what Mr. Owen was to clarify. As it reads now, the staff would be receive that submittal and approve it or decline it, or would we want to review it and see it when it came back? Any additional questions for the applicant? Anyone like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the city engineer recommendations or findings, and that we are presented once the wall is determined, that it comes back to the Planning Commission for review.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Is it going to be the intention that the retaining wall be of same material as the building, meaning brick, as opposed to split-face concrete block? Currently, the approach is going to be split-face concrete block, probably a gray color. But I heard one comment about wanting it to be same as the building, which is going to be a completely different approach. So we will need to know which way to continue with that resolution.
So is there any documents that would speak to a retaining wall as far as percentage? And would a retaining wall be considered a 70% brick in that design review? Okay. So there's currently.
I don't believe that specific requirement is applicable to
Thank you, sir. So our design review would more or less allow split face block. I'm looking it up.
No, it'll require a footing, continuous footing underneath the block, but the block will step back incrementally. The city engineer probably understands this as well, but okay. Right, I didn't hear the balance of that.
What you were using.
Okay,
Because you could have split face block like a foundation wall off of a standing footing and go straight up and not be near as supportive if you didn't use the step back blocks.
but the step back blocks will include a strip footing below them.
Okay.
So it'll kind of have a decorative tier to it as it steps back.
Yeah,
So we have a motion, which includes the review. I don't know if we want to try and give some kind of direction to the applicant for when they're drawing, or if I have a second.
The staff comments already include the condition of a review by the city, correct?
Correct. That would be a staff review, correct.
Okay. It's fine by me.
The motion on the table now would include it coming back to the Planning Commission, a drawing for the plans of the wall. But if we could just try and give them some kind of direction of what that drawing needs to be. But we have a first, if there's a second. We have a second.
I mean, I would be, I don't know that it has to come in front of us as long as staff approved it, but it's just kind of hard to ask somebody to approve something they don't know, and they're not even, 100% sure, because they just received the engineering comments today. So, I don't know, that would be kind of up to you. My first thought is just bring it back in front of the Planning Commission for we'd know exactly, but we can leave it in the staff's hands, and they're going to go by with whatever our codes require.
We could say if it doesn't match our discussions tonight, the staff bring it back to us, or things. Mr. Burks?
One thing I'll say, First Bank's been a great neighbor to the city of Fairview, and I would be shocked if they threw a product that just didn't look good. I mean, the bank's always been very nice, it's well-kept, it's a great item in town, and I assume that will continue forward. I expect it's not going to be ugly or anything like that, so I think the staff can probably make that decision just fine.
So I don't know if you guys want to withdraw your motion and your second to adjust to where it would just be staff review based off of this. And if you want to make a new motion.
I'll make the motion. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the site plan for First Bank under the condition of the staff comments that Mr. Owen has provided to us.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, guys. All right, we'll go to item 7.3. Construction plans, Whispering Wind subdivision, proposed 17 lots on 10.47 acres, property located along Cumberland Drive, tax map 47, parcel 67.01, property zoned R20, property owned by Walt Toddy. Mr. Toddy? We have a few staff comments. I'll get Mr. Jenkins to read them for me.
Yes, sir. Number one, the revised drainage calculations should be submitted that include the gutter spreads at each curb inlet location. And then number two, the proposed road grading in the area of Lot 1 appears to extend beyond the proposed public ROW and will require written approval from the Lot 1 owner, granting the developer permission to conduct the proposed grading activities on their property. This written approval should be provided prior to any permits being issued.
Sir? Any questions for the applicant on 7.3?
Are you okay with making the recommendations, what the city attorney has recommended? I mean, attorney, engineer.
Yes, and I think everything was corrected
Already.
accordingly to the recommendations.
Have you guys seen any revised plans? These might be new notes different from the staff review. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review yet or not.
Yeah, I'll speak to that along with the prior document, or the prior item. Every comment that is on the staff report has either been seen by the applicant and are carryover comments from the initial review, or they are additional comments that were generated as a result of the proper amount of detail being shown on the revised submittals. For instance, as the applicant mentioned under the prior agenda item, the initial submittal for that site plan was one page that left a lot of information not available to the staff in their initial review. So that's why those four comments, or my four comments in the prior agenda item had not been seen previously by the applicant. The two comments that are remaining here were comments that were on the initial review comments that were provided to the applicant and still remain in effect. They have addressed a number of other items. The second item is going to be, just something that needs to be a housekeeping measure that needs to be kept kind of in the loop and in the forefront for when we have a pre-con meeting to make sure that understanding by that property owner has been reached in writing.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or discussion? Anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve with the city engineer's recommendations
first. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Powers. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Toddy.
You.
We will move to item 7.4, Development Plan, Sweetbriar Springs, Phase 2, 22 proposed lots on 14.45 acres, property located along Sweetbriar Lane and Sweetbriar Circle, tax map 42, parcel 36, and tax map 22, parcels 128 and 128.01, property zone R20, property owned by James Philip Caldwell Jr. and James Philip Caldwell Sr. Representation here tonight. Good evening. If I could just get you to state your name for me.
I'm Antonio Salonga with Martin Engineering.
Sir. Oh, we have a few staff comments. Mr. Jenkins, if you could read them for me, please.
There are no outstanding planning or engineering staff comments on the development plan. All the technical items from the plan review workshop were addressed in time for the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I like it.
Any questions for the applicant? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. And a second, Mr. Anderson. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Move right into item 7.5, construction plan, Sweetbriar Springs, Phase 2, 22 proposed lots on 14.45 acres, property located along Sweetbriar Lane and Sweetbriar Circle, tax map 42, parcel 36, and map 22, parcels 128 and 128.01, property zone R20, property owned by James Philip Caldwell Jr. and James Philip Caldwell Sr. We have just a little note from the staff on item 7.5, Mr. Jenkins.
Yes, sir. Same exact notes from item 7.4. There are no outstanding planning or engineering staff comments on the development plan. All the technical items from the plan review workshop were also addressed in time for the meeting.
Sir. And just a quick note, it was very exciting to see the sidewalk extend all the way out there to the highway. So that was, thank you guys very much. That's going to be excellent. Any additional questions or comments?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to move to approve.
Okay. Second.
We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Item 7.6, construction plans, Fairview Station, Phase 2, 7 proposed lots on 3.17 acres, property located along Tiger Trail and Marissa Drive, tax map 42, parcel 28.03, property zone R20 PUD, property owned by Brandon Robertson. Just one note from the staff, Mr. Jenkins.
The street trees need to be added to the site layout sheet and to the roadway profile.
Sir? We have representation here tonight. Sir? Any questions for the applicant? So just to be clear, Phase 1 did have the street trees, and they're just missing that note probably. So the one comment we had was street trees need to be added to the layout sheet to the roadway profile, so it should be pretty minor.
As far as Phase 1 goes, I honestly don't believe that we actually had the street trees on the construction plans or the final plat. The final plat's already been recorded as well. Phase 2, I've talked to the developer about it. He's willing to do the street trees, but looking at the site plan, the right-of-way actually is at the back of the sidewalk on the cul-de-sac. I don't see how the street trees can go within the city's property within the right-of-way because it'd be on private property after the right-of-way. So I don't see how the street trees will be able to go in there. He's willing to do it. We'll just have to work with staff to see exactly where the placement needs to be.
So you not have like 5 and 5, and the tree would go on the inside of the first 5?
No, on the cul-de-sac radius, do the right-of-way width and cul-de-sac radius. Literally, the cul-de-sac bunts up to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is at the back of the curb. Whenever it transitions into a 7-foot green space. but right at the end of the cul-de-sac, it's sidewalks at the back of the curb.
Mr. Owen, if you don't mind, we have a lot of sheets here. Any particular one that we should be looking at for these street trees?
I feel like we had a similar thing happen before, where we actually had the developer put the street trees actually just in the lot before they were sold. Am I believing that correctly?
I don't recall particular, how would that fit? You would just add a tree to the landscape plan or for that individual lot? But then it wouldn't be in the public right of way like the others. And do we have any notes or comments from the initial phase about street trees and? Okay.
I actually went back and looked at the construction plans that were previously approved. It was before my time, but Mr. Moody's correct from SEC. They were not shown on the Phase 1 construction plans that I could see, and there were no notes on the final plat either. I'm not sure how that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that got overlooked, but.
When did that go through? Like, when was the,
2 years, a year and a half? or so?
I was gonna say, it's been a couple
remember?
years at least.
Been about a year, yeah.
So Will's gonna search for that plat to see if he has any notes from it, if there are any additional questions.
And we've got some issues with the Phase 3, the connectivity to Cox Road that we're in the process of dealing with staff with, which in order to get the connectivity that we want, or in order to, I guess, please everybody, we're going to have to replat some of the lots in Section 1, mainly Lot 6 and Lot 7, which is going to essentially do a replat of Lot 1. And after speaking with the developer, I think he's okay with doing the street trees because we're gonna have to replat it anyways. So if that solves that issue, then we can put the street trees in Section 1 because it's under development or under construction currently. But around the end of the cul-de-sac, I still don't see how it's possible. Maybe, at the end of where it transition, every 40 foot, something like that, but.
So where, just to hit on the connectivity, where are you discussing that connectivity? Is that back lot?
Yeah, it's on the Phase 3 on the bottom left right there where that cul-de-sac is right now.
That's awesome.
That cul-de-sac is constructed, but we're in the process of doing some new plans to remove that and then do a temporary cul-de-sac to the back of our property right there. That way it can be a future connectivity to Cox Road.
Excellent. Any additional questions?
yeah, I'm a little confused. It's still gonna be able to go from, Tiger Trail all the way to Cox Run. So what are you doing with the cul-de-sac? I know, but this is what he's talking about, isn't it, going up through there?
Possibly restructuring some of the lots where the cul-de-sac moves over or shifts some?
It'll be removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not on that phase just yet. That would be
Yeah,
future.
be clear.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, so what are our options right now?
So the only staff comment is street trees need to be
Yeah.
added. And so the applicant has said that they would be happy with adding those street trees. There's a little weird spot in the rear that would just have to be reviewed as far as allowing them into the right of way. Mr. Owens just trying to review any notes he might have on section 1 having trees or not.
Found it. There was a Section 1 landscape plan, sheet L 1.0, that was a part of the Phase 1 construction plans that does indeed show street trees. So now, I think the issue at hand, though, is, as indicated by Mr. Moody, the design of the cul-de-sac for this particular development is such that as you enter the bulb part of the cul-de-sac, the sidewalk itself is directly behind the concrete curb. So there is no grass strip between the back of the curb and the sidewalk edge. So street trees are not possible between the sidewalk and the curb and just the bulb of the cul-de-sac. What I hear tonight is the developer is willing to entertain placing a tree possibly on the private side of the right-of-way line, but I don't think that was part of the preliminary master plan. If you want to ask for that, you can. Ultimately, it would be on private property, and you'd have no jurisdiction on if the future property owner took it out or not. So we're only talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 lots at the very end of that cul-de-sac.
So just real quick on section 1, is that's something we wouldn't have to take any action on, but the staff can try and follow up on that to ensure that the plants would be planted before release of bonds or anything like that.
Correct.
And so now, our only staff comment is the street trees. They said they'd be prepared to install the street trees. Do we want to ask them to try and put some in the private section back there, where the right-of-way does not allow it?
And just to be clear, my conversations with him have only been about the street trees, not really the placement, either on the inside or outside of the right-of-way. So I don't know if he's willing to do it outside the right-of-way or not.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions?
So,
My comment is that the way those lots are taper into that cul-de-sac, to put the driveway in, depending on which way the lot's gonna sit, the tree's gonna be almost in a way, on every setup. I think it's a waste of time and money to talk about those trees, because they're gonna be in the way. I mean, once the landowner gets the home built, the driveway set, you can possibly have one, but in 5 years, if it's any kind of tree, then it's gonna really kind of block the view of the house. So I think should be none myself.
Well, there's a lot of trees currently on that property that have been removed to build this subdivision. So the idea of putting trees back was really appealing since it's around our elementary school. That's the only,
Trees, but not that, the way that cul-de-sac set, there's just, time you put driveways in there, you're just not gonna have much dirt left to put a tree until you get real close to the house. And if you only put 4 trees that should, been placed on those lots, have him put them somewhere else where you think you're negative on trees after the grubbing and clearing.
what about the rest of the subdivision? We're only talking about 4 lots. The rest of the subdivision's going to have trees along the whole thing?
On section 1,
What we're looking at right there on that image?
yeah, so section 2 is just the 7 lots on the right-hand side. Section 1's under construction, asphalt's down, and the final plat's already been approved. I was not aware of a landscape plan, but he's willing to do the trees in there as well, which is provided. There's a 7-foot grass face in between the back of the curb and the sidewalk, and he's more than willing to do trees in there as well.
Okay.
That would be something that our staff can review prior to releasing any bonds or recommendations for bonds, and so. So right now, we're just at phase 2, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots there, so it would just be the back 4 cul-de-sac lots that wouldn't allow for a tree. And so the other 3 lots would get a tree at the proper spacing. You know, like to make a motion or any additional questions?
Approve.
With the staff comments or without the staff comments there?
Without the staff comments.
Okay, so we have a motion? So the staff comments, just for clarification, the staff comments would require it to be in the right-of-way section per the spacing, and then not the back 4 lots. And so we would want to probably include the staff comment. Okay. So if you want to amend your motion or make a new motion.
I'll amend my motion to include staff comments.
Okay.
Approve with the staff comments.
I'll second the motion.
First and a second, any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir.
Apologize for the confusion.
Oh, no worries at all. Now we'll move into 7-7, final plat, Fairview Station Phase 2, 7 proposed lots on 3.17 acres, property located along Tiger Trail and Marissa Drive. Tax map 4242, parcel 28.08, property zone R20 PUD, property owned by Brandon Robertson. And just a little note from the staff, I asked Mr. Jenkins to read it.
There are no outstanding planning or engineering staff comments on the development plan. All of the technical items from the plan review workshop were addressed in time for the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Questions for the applicant on 7-7? I'd like to make a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion? Second, Powers. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving to item 7.8, construction plans, Audubon Cove mixed-use PUD, 47 proposed lots on 21.42 acres, property located along Highway 100, tax map 42, parcel 46.01, property zone RS8/commercial general PUD, property owned by Cry Lake. A little note from the staff.
There are no outstanding planning comments. The city engineer had not finished his review at the time of this report, but will provide a staff commentary on this item at the meeting.
Thanks, sir. Right, Representative? You prepared to present?
Guys ready? Buckle up? No. There's only one outstanding comment. Any approval tonight that you wish to render should be subject to TDOT approval of the required improvements along their state right-of-way. There's a proposed turn lane, I believe, on the highway there, and so obviously TDOT would need to concur with that proposed improvement. Other than that, everything's in good order.
Move to approve, subject to the engineer's comments, as stated.
First? Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Anderson. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, sir. That concludes our new business. We'll move into reports and discussions, information. 8.1, city planner. Stanza.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
8.2, city engineer, Mr. Owen.
I have nothing further.
Before I move away from you guys, I want to ask about training. If we have anything, if we're working on anything, I know we're coming down to the wire. got you tonight, so we'll come to you. Mr. Potter, City Attorney,
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
City Manager, Mr. Collins.
Chairman, members of the commission, just one thing for now on the training. You'll be getting an email from us this week with some dates proposed for the first and second week of December. To follow through, we talked about doing an all-day training. We would like to do that once we get everyone on site, settled on a date. Then the agenda will be a couple of things. The first will be just a standard review of terms and definitions as it relates to the Planning Commission. That's pretty important as we move forward. We know we want to see that. The second will be a standard operating procedure for the board as it moves forward. What comes before the board, what does not come before the board. That will be those will be the first half of the day. We'll break for lunch. The second half of the day will be sewer step systems and how they function. Oftentimes as those come through, we hear the same questions from citizens, which is not a bad thing. But if there's an understanding by all the members of the board for how those work, then that process gets to be a little easier to work through. We anticipate the day taking the full 8 hours. Once we complete that 8 hours of training, we'll follow up with a work session, either at the beginning of a planning commission meeting or a city council meeting, to kind of hear what everybody heard in that process and plan for the comprehensive plan that will start in January. The comprehensive plan, moving on from the training, the comprehensive plan RFP is prepared. It will be out this week. We expect it to be out 3 weeks to have those proposals come back to the city council. We'll likely go through a brief interview process. We would like to have them identified by the end of this calendar year so we can move forward beginning in January with that process. We do expect that it will take the full 12 months, all of calendar year 2018, and we'll be able to include most of the training for the Planning Commission as a part of the community meetings that we have with the community as we move forward with that. So we'll kind of integrate those at the same time. We'll likely have 5 community meetings throughout the year as it relates to the planning or the comprehensive plan. The last of those will likely be September. So we'll move through and make sure we have everybody's training hours for the coming year, calendar 18, well in advance, likely through June. So that's where we are from a planning and training standpoint. Also, one last thing I have for you, we're also getting out, we have a list of the builders and developers who commonly do business within the city. We're going to kind of do a meet and greet / lunch with them. The purpose for that will be to hear what the builders, developers, and everyone related to that believe we do wrong. That's kind of where we're looking to go. Obviously, as you grow, meeting. Sir.
You had a full day meeting there.
Possibly. Here's what typically happens. You know this, and some of you do. What happens is you get into comprehensive plans, which are always difficult for communities, and as you get into revision of subdivision regulations, zoning, all of those things, oftentimes what happens is your cities, and this happens in Franklin, Metro, Brentwood, Birmingham, Lexington, Kentucky, no matter where you are, you're typically compared to somewhere you're not. Franklin doesn't make us do this. Brentwood does make us do this. Lexington, Kentucky does the same way. What we want to do is give everyone the opportunity to let them explain to us what they see our faults are. That can be anything from inspections to how we apply the subdivision regulations, anything that we do in that process. The purpose for that is we want to hear them and include them as we move forward with the revision of the subdivision regulations. Zoning is one thing, but the subdivision regulations and the people who use them is something else. So we're willing to kind of spend a day hearing all the bad. We want to take note of that. We want to make good use of that time, but use it as a tool to help us move forward. So the months of December, January, and February will be busy training months. We intend them for that. And we look forward to hearing some of the bad so we can get through some of the good. So that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Communication from the Planning Commission members. Ms. Slaughter?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Anderson? Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Powers?
Nothing tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burks?
Just one thing before I forget. Mr. Anderson, I had the hardest time hearing you. I think your mic's so far away.
Okay, what do you want me to repeat?
No, that's fine. Just,
We go back to item 7.
I apologize.
just something to be aware of.
I wear hearing aids, so I hear myself quite well.
Okay. City planner, there's been discussion back and forth on, do landscape plans have to go to the tree board to approve? What's the answer to that? I know Ms. Slaughter's asked that question previously. What's the answer? Do we know?
We've done a lot of research on that. Not that we've been able to identify. If you look at the tree protection ordinance, I mean, it discusses the tree commission's role in a community-wide plan, looking at street trees and city property. So I think that that's something that we're gonna hopefully shore up in the coming months as we get our books, worked on and redefined, and that way everybody will be clear moving forward as to the roles of all the commissions.
Collins, you have any additions to add to that?
No, sir, except the answer is no.
So it appears it's been done in the past, probably as a courtesy or something along those lines, perhaps. But I know there's been a request for an answer, so now we have it.
I think that the answer has been given. I just don't know if it is wanting to be accepted. We talked about this in depth about 2 years ago. Mr. Owen provided me every ordinance back to like 1994 that's happened to the tree board to try and get that answer, and it kind of dies and then kind of slowly comes back, and so, you know.
Well, and even on commercial though, is that still the same, or is it just residential? Same with commercial, okay.
Yeah, as Mr. Butler indicated, I did, as it sounds like Kristen did too, extensive research, and the ultimate answer is no. I think what has happened in the past has been, I guess, a desire by the Tree Commission and the city arborist to review those plans, and I think what had happened, some of your planning staff, prior planning staff, not current, kind of forsake or abandon the review of landscaping requirements because the tree board had reviewed it and approved it. And what was happening was the tree board would review the type of plant and where it was going, but there may have been some sites that fell in the cracks as far as how much landscaping is required, where it's required, and the intensity of that landscaping. And so it's been my recommendation for a while now that the comprehensive review of specific landscape plans for commercial sites and any other individual site should follow at the footsteps of the Planning Commission and the staff that reviews the Planning Commission submittals. That's where the comprehensive, I guess, approach to review should and does take place. The city arborist is involved in that process and has now been brought on board to offer his expertise during that process. So I think moving forward the city will be provided with a much better comprehensive review of the landscaping requirements and not just is that tree on our approved tree list, as what I think has happened in years past. So if that helps any, I want to make sure it's not a situation where if the tree board's not looking at it, nobody's looking at it. That's not what's going on.
Well, hopefully we'll make a note and record this section, so in 2 or 3 years, when it becomes a question again, because it seems to pop up, we can just hit play, and everybody knows the answer. Thank you.
More effective than that is as Kristen referenced, we part of what we're looking at in the revision to the documents is to clearly outline those responsibilities. And that way the tree board feels comfortable with, okay, this isn't just falling in the cracks, somebody is overseeing this, and then they can revert back to what their initial intent was, and that was to offer recommendations to the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners on what they want to see the actual landscaping requirements be holistically and not for a specific individual site.
There. Mr. Burks, anything else? Mayor Carroll?
Are you gonna read? Or should I, because I want to comment on.
Yeah, no, I can.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, I received, and Mr. Butler did too, a resignation letter tonight. So I'm just, since it's my turn, I'll let him read or make any comments. But we just want to thank Mr. Mangrum for his service. He's just been an asset to our community. His skill set and knowledge that he brought to the board is, it's going to be missed. And so I just did want to make the comment to Mr. Mangrum. Thank you for your service. And I hate to see you go. And then also I was going to make a comment for the board that Sweetbriar came back in front of us a couple years ago, and the builder at the time wanted to make all kinds of variants. Wanted the board to make all kinds of variants. And so anyway, as we were going over this tonight, I kept thinking, thank goodness we stuck to our gun and we didn't bend over. And so I just want to let this board know, because a lot of y'all weren't there at the time, because we didn't give, we may have lost that developer and they may have sold it to somebody else, but somebody else came along and they bought the property and they built to our codes. So, just keep that in mind. We may lose some, but it's about, in the end, just making good, sound decisions for the city. And also, one more thing. I will most likely be out the next meeting. I am having surgery, and if I'm out any more than one meeting, I may temporarily appoint my seat, but I'm not going to make that clear right now. But as the board, I will let the city manager know and the chair if I'm going to do that, and I'll have a date of my return. Acknowledge, is that the proper way to do it? I know we had lots of discussion about. Okay. So, but for right now, hopefully I'll just be out a month.
Two things, and I'll try to make them as quick as possible. One is just a quick question. Ultimately, who is responsible for the beautification and the appearance of our city? Is it this board? Is it the staff? Who makes those rules on the way our city is supposed to look? When a developer comes in here, for instance, we just talked for 20 minutes about trees in a cul-de-sac. Like, whose responsibility is it to make those policies ahead of time so that they don't even have to question it?
So that would be our subdivision regulations, our design review manual, and so that's what our staff would be referencing when they say street trees weren't on the plat, as we have a requirement for street trees every 40 foot on center or things like that. So there's requirements in place that they have access to, and that they just didn't include on that.
Okay. I just want to make sure that whatever we envision, and I know we're all going to have different ideas, and it's impossible to get everybody to agree on the same thing, but hopefully we as a board can come together and say, hey, this is what I want our city to look like, and come up with some sort of strategy and some sort of plan on like how to do that. I just don't know what the official way to implement something like that is.
So, and I feel like I'm always holding on to a whim, but we're getting closer and closer of a revised master plan and revised codes and subdivision regulations and stuff. And so we're going to have some input when that time comes to try and set that idea, set that vision, and encompass it and incorporate it to where it would be held as the new standard going forward.
Just for examples, I mean, my wife and I bought our house in Western Woods, new construction 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago or so. And the builder was allowed to use 2 different types of grass, one of which dies already, so like it goes dormant right around October, November, and it's tan. And it's right next to another house that's got beautiful green lush grass because it's actually meant to be here. And then like our lot is split with like 2 different types of grass. We have this huge vinyl wall. It's a 2-story house, and it's just this ugly, like tan vinyl. Like stuff like that, I feel like we shouldn't like allow. Like when people think of like not wanting subdivisions and these little RS20 and smaller developments coming in here, that's what they're thinking about. Like that's the kind of stuff they're thinking about. We don't have any trees in our property because they tore them all down just to build the house. It's like, it's not pretty, you know, and I wish that we could do something about that. Okay, so that's my soapbox for now. I just don't know what to do about that, so I was hoping you guys could give me some guidance. Number 2 is also in the subdivision. I had whenever the hurricanes came through here in the hurricane season, one of my neighbors, he has a low-lying lot, and his house completely got flooded, totally flooded. Luckily, he was able, like him and his wife had a great group of friends and neighbors around them to come in and rip everything out, floorboards, like 2 feet of the drywall all the way around, completely had to renovate their house essentially after this. But the disappointing thing is, for at least a couple years before then, he had come before the boards, he'd come before the city to try to do something about it because he knew it was going to be an issue, and no one ever did anything about it. And now he has to completely re-renovate his house because we didn't, or the city, we didn't do anything about it prior to then. So is there anything we can do now to help him out with like the cost of all this stuff? Because he wasn't in a floodplain, he didn't have flood insurance. So it's just the way the lots were developed around him forced all the water and everything to rush into his lot, and it'll happen every single time. So what can we do about that to prevent stuff like that happening in the future to other people, and also maybe to help him out in this situation? And he's not asking. I just, as a neighbor and as a concerned citizen, I'd like to help the guy out.
So, and if anything I say is incorrect, you guys just stop me, but, so when a new development comes, there'll be drainage calculations that are reviewed by an engineer and then also reviewed by us. So maybe something didn't perform as calculated, maybe something stopped up. Each individual case will be different, but there are measures in place to try and prevent that, to ensure that all the water on site is controlled. And so there are measures in place, and maybe something just didn't act or perform as intended. I don't know if you guys have any additional comments.
I don't know enough about it, but.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss in saying that Fairview has any responsibility to him. I wouldn't think we would, but I'll be happy to talk to you about it outside the meeting.
I make a few comments in my past history of development or being involved in subdivisions. For about 4 years, I was president of the Copperfield subdivision in Nashville. I built 15 homes in there. I was a builder when the developer developed the property. 7 Mile Creek runs through it. It's very attractive. We really did a lot of landscaping with that creek. About once a year when you have one of these big rains like we had 3 weeks ago. Now 7 Mile Creek has been developed over into the Williams County side, and waters come in to a subdivision because the drainage systems upstream have been altered, or the existing house where they've got retention ponds, the discharge side may be clogged or something like that. There's a lot of external factors that cause these flooding issues. To sue, you got to go back and check what drainage systems upstream have been modified, or what drainage systems in the retention ponds have been maintained. Trees thrown in them, various sundry things. You really are, there's a phrase I won't use, but anyway, there's almost impossible to find some way to sue on some of this stuff. And if he's outside the 100-year floodplain, he's got some problems, and it's tough. There are some sources, but it's not very easy. One other comment, Bermuda grass, which turns brown in this part of the country, is common to this area, and it's the most durable grass around. Most people, like myself, we put a little winter rye on top of it and keep on mowing.
Well, and just to add to that, I mean, they're more than welcome to call the city if there is reason to be, if there was a new construction or within a recent time, and, you know, they can send somebody out and see if there's anything we can do. But a lot of times it's not. I'm sure Mr. Collins and gets enough of those calls. But, you know, there are options if there was a new development and then all of a sudden something wasn't done. But that's why Mr. Owen reviews everything, and we try to make sure that before somebody leaves a subdivision that they've done everything like they're supposed to do. Not to say, I mean, over the years I've seen, you know, thank you, get backed up or whatever, and that, you know, the city will come in and, you know, try to help out with that. Obviously, it's a public street and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I can just add, do you mind saying the subdivision, is it in Western Woods?
It is.
Okay, in the new section or the existing section?
It's right with, it's in the, not the newest sections, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So those were done several years ago. I can't tell you now, my review includes, and it actually, the initial review comments for, I think, all three of the construction plans that were on tonight's agenda, my review included comments that required some revisions to the proposed grading so that each lot does have access to a constructed ditch that will carry the stormwater to the infrastructure that's being installed in the subdivision and then ultimately into a detention pond and then discharged accordingly downstream. So that is an issue that I take seriously because I've had similar family and friends that have been unknowing of situations when they purchase property. Unfortunately, there's just lots that aren't good lots across Middle Tennessee and not just Fairview. And, if there are things that we can do within the public right-of-way upstream that can help, I think as a city, we would want to look at some of those things. But as mentioned previously, a lot of the lot-to-lot issues are private issues on private property, not on an easement, that quite frankly are troublesome for city staff and personnel to try to access with legal issues performing work on private property. So there's some challenges there, but we certainly want to seek to provide that level of review for any future subdivisions for sure.
I appreciate you at least entertaining the
Sure.
thought.
Yeah.
Just my heart in our whole neighborhood just broke for them.
Yeah. One thing, it's a common misconception. Even if you're not in a 100-year floodplain, a recognized FEMA floodplain, you have the ability to go buy flood insurance. And it is really, really cheap if you're not in a recognized FEMA floodplain. So
good to know.
Might be an option. Yeah, absolutely. Now, the underwriter part of that underwriting may ask them if they've ever been flooded before, so I would recommend that they be honest. But that is available to any property owner that has a land that is inside a community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, and Fairview does. So.
Anything else?
No, I've wasted enough time.
Okay. I'll try and be brief. Mr. Ingram did send over a resignation letter prior to the meeting tonight, so I do want to acknowledge him and thank him very much for his time served. He offered a lot of technical expertise and a lot of reference of old subdivisions because he had been around. So the age of our planning commission is shrinking, and so sometimes it's going to be hard to reference back. But did want to thank Tim. On the spirit of trees, I know some other municipalities do a lot of things of where the final plat will have a number of calipers, a number of trees that had to be replanted. Maybe it's something we can visit down the road of trying to replenish some of the trees that are being removed from our subdivisions to put them back into the individual lots. Just throwing that out there for our ideas in the future. Add it to the list. And then there's just another thing I brought up to Ms. Constanza yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, about Cumberland Estates. The first house went in, and the first house put a brick water table up, stopped, and it looks like they're going to install siding. From my recollection of serving on this board, we thought all the houses that were fronting Cumberland were going to be brick, and so I've asked her just to try and see if she can find anything about that, because the first one in right now does not have full brick. And the notes from I believe it's the May meeting of last year, the motion for approval from our planning commission was in regards to all homes that face Cumberland being full brick. And so just want to bring it to light if anyone has any recollection of it. I guess it's just us that was here now, but just want to bring that up.
Mr. Butler,
Yes, sir.
can I touch two spots on that?
Sir?
Reverse order. The home that you're mentioning, I drove by there tonight. I did have a conversation with someone involved in that development several weeks back. And I couldn't tell tonight how that house looked. The first thing that struck me, aside from the facade, was that's awfully close to Cumberland Drive. To some of the points that were made earlier tonight, I think if you're in a road that's not a major arterial, that's fine. If you're on a major collector, that's right up on the road, so something to be addressed long term. Second, the discussion I had with developer specific to that lot was the question came up about brick or a masonry stone. And what was asked was, did it have to be brick specifically, or could it be a masonry stone that was a nicer product than a brick that would not be vinyl siding or some other thing, where there's be certain facades that were brick and certain were stone accent. So that was what was asked, and I would anticipate that's what will be installed on that above.
Currently, there's a brick water table about 3 feet up. It's pretty much built for siding. I don't think that they would wrap all 4 sides in stone. Maybe they will, but it would be an odd-looking house probably.
Don't know, just giving you the conversation that took
Yes, sir.
place. So we'll keep an eye on that, make sure. I placed a call tonight
Thank
to
you,
see if we can get some follow-up on that, and we will. So as soon as I can get that out, I may just email you back and let you know
Thank
what
you,
that
sir.
answer
Very
was.
much.
And the last thing in reference to the flooding, one of the things that we've talked about and that we will need to consider, particularly as we consider these lots, is a term called ISR, or impervious surface ratio. What happens is when you develop these lots, and we'll use Western Woods as an example, when they come in and you have your side setbacks and your back setbacks that are what they are, once you clear those lots, your storm drain applies to the entire subdivision, and your detention applies to the entire subdivision. And Mr. Owen's right, there's a calculation for that and how that goes. What happens is over time, as these individual lots are developed, whether they're grass or wooded or some other thing, there's an ability to retain water. Impervious surface ratio is a calculation that takes the percentage of that lot and allows for a certain percentage of that lot to be impervious. Roofing, sidewalk, driveway, things that are not impervious, that don't collect water. Once you define that calculation, then that percentage is all that there can be of impervious material on that lot. So that will guide you as you move forward. And again, this is more than you probably want to know at this point. But as we start talking about R15, R20, R10, R5, R15 PUD, R20 PUD, whatever they are, if you apply that impervious surface ratio to each lot as a calculation, then you'll determine the total impervious surface runoff for the subdivision. You'll also determine it per lot, and each individual lot will be responsible for its own water, just as up the waterway, each individual subdivision is responsible for its water. So not that there won't be mistakes or things that take place, but as these subdivisions are built, you will have it where each lot retains or detains or disposes of its own water within its own watershed, if that makes sense. So as we move forward, there'll be a way and a calculation to install there. It does get complicated. Builders are not going to like it. I'm just going to tell you that's the way that it works. But it's the right thing to do as we compact these subdivisions and we affect watersheds up and down the way. So the issue with repairing storm drain upstream is every repair you make upstream increases the flow downstream. So as we start looking at these repairs, we're going to have to start looking at making repairs at the furthermost downstream area and working backwards. If you start downstream and make repairs, you've at least, you hope, you facilitated some place for that water to go or some other thing. Everything you repair upstream has a negative effect downstream, so you need to start downstream and work your way back up. And we'll start that, but the ISR will go a long way toward remedying some of that, so. And I'll email you tomorrow on that house and let you know what we're
Thank you,
doing.
sir. I appreciate it.
So, thank you guys very much.
And you guys, Thursday night, I guess the Board of Commissioners has a discussion about silt fencing and stormwater, correct? Is that right? So I'm
Yes, sir.
anxious to hear that discussion, just to hear more, because we've had some calls recently about some washouts, been terrible weather, but I don't know if you have any, I'll wait till Thursday. but-
That's fine. The conversation simply is, and let's use Horn Tavern as an example. We got the calls about Horn Tavern and some of the runoff there. Well, the developer, rightfully so, and this is where the confusion comes in. We had a storm event. The water obviously washes off onto the road, and you have construction trucks that drive through that mud and get on the road. It's the responsibility of that developer to retain their dirt and mud regardless of the source that allowed it to be removed, whether it be water or a truck or some other traffic. The developer, in an attempt to clean the road, and they was making an honest attempt to clean the road by pressure washing or spraying the mud and debris off of the road or off of the side of the road into the regular storm drain. And as I explained to them on site, that's what we're trying to avoid. The purpose is not to have it wash off onto the road so you can wash it off the road into a place we didn't want it to go. The purpose is to retain it on your property, and you're responsible for that, whatever that measure is. So as we get into that will be silt fencing, that could be a rumble strip, that can be a gravel entranceway, dedicated construction, however that moves. But the replacement of that goes back to the property, not to where we were intended for it not to go. So that's a long conversation, but it's one worthy of having, so.
And just one note, another municipality recently enforced, when we pull a permit, we sign a disclosure saying that they would have a stop work order on an individual lot rather than the overall SWIP. And so now they're being able to contain it into an individual lot just for reference.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I have. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Anything else? I will adjourn.